Hello, my loves. This is Annette of AnnetteLeonard.com, joining you again for another moment for chronic wellness. I'm talking today about autoimmune disease. Now, those of you who have it have some clarity about what it is. And those of you who don't probably have some idea that you think is what it is. So we're going to demystify autoimmune disease. So autoimmune disease at its very most basic definition is an immune disease where your immune system is attacking itself. And this can happen, friends, almost anywhere in the body. So if it happens in the intestines, it can be ulcerative colitis, or it can be Crohn's. If it happens in the blood vessels, it can be vasculitis. If it happens in the joints, it's most commonly rheumatoid arthritis. In my case, one of the mixed connective tissue autoimmune diseases that I have is polymyositis. It is just one of the myositises. There's also dermatomyositis and inclusion body myositis and juvenile myositis. And it can happen in the brain. It can happen in the ears. It can happen probably in almost any place in the body, and just that there are those that are so rare we haven't necessarily discovered them or labeled them. And there can be these assaults that happen sort of all over your system. I mean, my cluster of autoimmune diseases, which is called antisynthetase syndrome, impacts all of my skeletal muscles. It impacts my eyes, my hands, my joints, my lungs. I'm trying to think if that's it. That might be all. So a lot of the system. And it is most common for someone who has an autoimmune disease to go see a rheumatologist. Now, rheumatologists are a kind of specialist that it usually takes a gatekeeper, like your own physician, to get you into. And oftentimes it takes blood work that proves that you have an autoimmune disease to get into. Now, not always is that true. And I remember the first time I applied for disability, I wasn't yet diagnosed with my autoimmune diseases, but I was diagnosed with fibromyalgia. And I had this wacky catch-22 where the paperwork for disability says that to be classified with having fibromyalgia, you must have a rheumatologist give you that diagnosis. And yet I couldn't find a rheumatologist who would see me without having an autoimmune disease. So I was in this cart before the horse, horse before the cart kind of situation where I couldn't get into a rheumatologist, but I also couldn't get the disability paperwork without seeing a rheumatologist to say that I had fibromyalgia. So there's lots of things at play here. And I certainly have known people who had ulcerative colitis or Crohn's who only saw a gastroenterologist and didn't see a rheumatologist. I think there are people with conditions like psoriatic arthritis that first presents in the skin who primarily see a dermatologist rather than a rheumatologist, even though each of these conditions are rheumatological, are autoimmune in nature. So while there is this umbrella autoimmune condition like lupus, like spondylosing I'm not getting that one right, like a number of other conditions, Not everyone goes to a rheumatologist, and some of that might be availability, and some of that might be the knowledge of your GP and who they referred you to first. But that's just a little background on autoimmune conditions. To be continued, and I wonder about you. Do you have any autoimmune diseases that impact your state of chronic illness? I'd love to hear. It's the truth. So sound off in the comments. Find me on Twitter or Instagram or Facebook. And until we're together again, be well.